if you got this expectation, CO, of perfection, understand friendly fire is a term for a reason. Even in fucking war, we've got American troops that kill other American troops by accident. Like, you're never going to get 100% perfection in any process, especially when you're talking about dealing with tens of millions of people. There's going to be one or two anomalies swept under the rug, unfortunately. It just happens. Even our prison system, there's a handful of people that are in there that did not commit a crime, but they got swept up because you're just dealing with a large number of people.
I get it, man. So basically, we're litigating, and in the conversation between me and you right now, say, are there people that are getting due process violated, right? We don't really need to argue stats, because at the end of the day, what we're saying is one person in jail is too many. That doesn't deserve to be there. You understand?
But you understand? You're asking for a utopia. You understand perfection? The only thing that's perfect is death. That's the only thing that has a perfect count on this earth, and you're expecting perfection with imperfect human beings. Like,
so this is why the perfecting of the Constitution and the ideas of America is always a North Star, right? So with perfection, right, we don't ever expect perfection in anything, right? But the Constitution is not perfect, right? But our North Star has always been to be a country that gives people due process. It was originally a country of immigrants. So I'm saying, no, it's not perfect. But to sit on a stage and we're talking about it's inconsiderate and it's leftist and it's terrible for me to speak with humanity about the treatment of human beings, that's all I'm saying. Why can't we circle around that?
But then when you start off your opening statement on that was they're not getting their due process. They are getting their due process. The vast majority are getting their due process.
Not all of them. All of them have due process.
Okay, but again, listen to what you guys are saying. You guys are shooting for perfection. Yes, but not every. Hold on, man. Hold on. 1 second. Bro.
But that's the North Star for the country.
What I'm saying is this is where it's fucking. You guys sound like retards. You guys are expecting perfection. Well, not all. You said even if one person. Guess what? There's going to be one fucking person always. You're dealing with an imperfect human being. You've been talking for a long time, and I've been listening. Let me get my point out. I've been respectful, and I'll let you talk. What I'm saying is when you start off your opening statement with, well, if one, that's too many. Bro, you're dealing with millions of people. It's not going to be a perfect process. And if your argument is going to be, well, everybody's got to be treated equally, you're never going to fucking win, and it sounds retarded.
Hold on, before you go, I need to insert something here, because the people are talking around this, and I think we should get some facts on the table. So, back in 1996, there was a bill that was passed, the Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigration Responsibility Act, which gave the federal government the authority to remove certain non-citizens without a hearing if they're apprehended shortly after entry and cannot prove lawful presence. So this is something that was passed back in 1996. I don't know if you guys are looking at the calendar, but that's quite some time ago. The only thing that's changed recently under the Trump administration is the Supreme Court also allowing for the expedited removals to go to third countries, and so that's the only change that's taken place since 1996 is that we could send them to we don't even have to send them back to their nation of origin. We could send them back to a third country, and we've selected a few to do that. And by the way, the bill was passed. So it became law in '96, and then this Supreme Court ruling that allowed for third country deportations. This just got passed by the Supreme Court. So what you're saying is you want the rule of law to be followed, and what my contention would be is that the rule of law is being.
Can I get in really quickly?
Wait a second, CO, I got you. So let me just say this real quick, 2 seconds. I pinned an article to the top. Trump scores major win in birthright citizenship cases. Supreme Court curbs nationwide injunctions. So I'm going to go CO and then PB. Guess you.
Hey, Ryan. Hey, Mojo, let me just correct you briefly because you have a misunderstanding. I'm assuming you're not a lawyer, but you're super smart, right? Read if you could, because each letter of a bill or a law is important. Read if you would what you just said with that law, and let me just make a point to you so you understand what I mean, okay? just say about the law that was passed in '96? How long can they be in the country for that exclusion to be able to have them deported immediately? How long?
Let me post it for everyone to read.
Okay, but just tell me how long can they be in the country for them to be able to be deported immediately?
I'm gathering my facts so I don't do what most of you do here on Clubhouse.
Okay.
Let me go
And
get it.
I don't do what you're saying. I only deal with what I know. So what I'm saying to you is, and this is where people have misinterpreted and why people get in these arguments, to your point, what you just said is not what Trump is doing. He's not deporting people that have only been in the country for a short amount of time. So basically he's saying, if you catch these people and they get across the border, they've been here for X number of days, deport them immediately. I agree with that. That's a law that should be followed. That's not what ICE is doing in your 1,500 number scenario, right? They're deporting people who've been a janitor for a school system for 15, 20 years. That law that you're talking about does not apply to people who have been in the country for more than a couple of years. So it's still splitting hairs, and I still agree with you, but don't use the argument about there's a law that supports him deporting people immediately using that 1996 law.
My question is,
Coolsey, shut up. Be quiet.
I'm gathering the information, but I think Paige won.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I wanted to step back just to the due process thing. And by the way, I mean, I think due process is very important. I think it's a point to make sure that, we're talking about consistently. That's all fine. But the issue I have is we're not talking about it consistently, where, I'm glad Abrego Garcia came back and he'll have his day in court. And the one case I wanted to highlight, or one thing that happened under the Biden admin, is I think we remember the makeup artist that got sent to the prison, and people said, well, he's not a criminal, yada, yada, yada. So what happened when the Remain in Mexico was repealed is that a lot of people were crossing the border, whether they're claiming asylum or not, and we didn't have time to properly vet them. So border agents, at their discretion, were putting people in maximum security prisons and detention centers during that course, because you can't, just let a ton of people in and not vet them first, even though we do that. And so if we do care about due process, we have to think about all of the people with all of these illegal border crossings that ended up getting put into detention centers, and even the asylum claims where, maybe they have some type of asylum status, like the makeup artist, but someone decided his tattoos looked weird and they put him in jail. So I think we just can't be selective on where we care about due process.
Excellent. Let me go ahead and now read. I wanted to make sure I gathered the facts here. So the 96 bill would have allowed for 14 days and within 100 miles of the southwest border. In 2019 under Trump, that was expanded to under 2 years anywhere in the U.S. So you like if you entered illegally and there was let's see what the definition that they had. If you're apprehended anywhere in the country, not just the border, in 2019 they expanded this, so they had up to 2 years. And so the people that you're arguing for with, due process violations would have had to have entered unlawfully over 2 years ago. So if you have specific examples of that, then you would have a case. But if they've entered the country within the last 2 years and they're sent back, they don't get due process, and that's the U.S. law.
I'm going to push back just a tad. My understanding is no matter who you are or where you come from, as soon as you step foot on American soil, you are entitled to due process. Now, what that due process is and how that due process is played out depends on the law you've broken or allegedly broken, what you've been arrested for, and what the jurisdiction is. And I can give cites in the Constitution to that. But if I could digress for just a moment, I just noticed something. It's probably because of my eyesight. JB, are you there? Can you unmute if you're there?
I'm here. What's up?
I want to ask you one question, but you can address this later. I just noticed for the first time that you have an orange-yellow star, which means you are a Clubhouse paid member. If you wanted to explain what your decision went into getting that, I would appreciate that, but we can talk about that later.
I don't know, $50 a year. I thought it was a good deal, and I like to go into spaces anonymously when people are talking shit about me.
Thank you, JB.
I could respond to you, Steve, on when it comes to matters of immigration. The Supreme Court believes that immigration's a matter for the executive and the legislative branch to have exclusive powers, and they've reinforced this in decisions like Klein-Deist versus Mandel in 1972 and Fiallo versus Bell in 1977. You could look up those cases if you like.
Hey, Roger, do you know if the bill of 2024 that was proposed by both parties included an amendment to the 1999 bill? And that's why I was asking you. Thank you for that correction to your earlier statement, Roger, that it is the 2019 where they amended it. I said 1 or 2 years because I couldn't remember. So thank you for that edit, and that is what we're working from. Do you know, Roger? I'm sorry, Mojo. Do you know if the 2024 immigration bill included an amendment to the 2019 bill?
No, they're completely unrelated. They were working completely outside of the framework of the 96 and the 2019 amendment.
There was something in that bill that changed a part of the amount of time that they got arrested. I thought they were trying to move it to 1 year or something like that. I could be wrong, but you're saying there was definitely no consideration for amending that part of that bill in the new bill, correct?
I will search it again, but I don't believe so. I don't believe there's been anything proposed to change that. But again, that would mean that for those that are saying that, hey, people are getting deported without due process, in order for you to have an argument there, it would have to be people that entered here unlawfully and have been here for 2 years or more. So anyone that yeah. So if you could find those cases, then you would have an argument. By the way, it wouldn't shock me to find that there are violations of that. That the issue would be if you are deporting people, that have been here for more than 2 years, that would be in violation of the law, and through the court system, I'm sure you could get that right.
Mojo, if I may, Mojo, just Mojo. Yeah, thank you. Mojo, just to follow up to what you said, and again, maybe my interpretation is wrong. Doesn't the 14th Amendment to our Constitution guarantee every person, no matter who they are, where they come from, that sets foot on our soil, due process, whatever due process might be?
Well, I've given you the exceptions that the Supreme Court's allowed for.
Fair enough. Thank you.
But my question is, when it comes to the writ of habeas corpus, like produce the body, like when we're talking about the idea of due process, how does this apply to people when we're deporting them? And we're not deporting them because they committed a crime, other than they came into this country illegally. So now we have to judge these people whether they came in the country illegally, when we can initially prove that they are not here legally, and now we got to ruin our judicial system with their time because they're overflowing us? What the fuck is that about?
Well, that was a very nice commentary and statement, Doc.
Now, my question is, what about them not showing up for their hearing? isn't that in violation if they don't show up or they don't attempt to make the process correct? If they are here and they don't do what they're supposed to do, or they say they're here on asylum, aren't they supposed to go to court and say this is why I'm seeking an asylum? And if they don't do it, doesn't that give them a right to be deported?
As long as a deportation order is issued because they missed their hearing, yes. If a deportation order is issued, even if it's years ago, they can be picked up off the street, thrown on a bus, thrown to jail, and kicked the hell out of the country.
Bye, Felicia.
Hold on. Here's the other thing. Let's say someone had been here for more than 2 years. If they came here unlawfully, here's what they would have to show in order to be able to stay. They would need to be able to show that proof that they've been here for over 2 years. And this is just to be able to get the hearing, right? You have to be able to show utility bills, bank statements, pay stubs, lease agreements, medical and dental records, school records if you have kids, receipts with names and dates, and affidavits from employers, family, and community members. So these are ways that you can prove that you've been here for 2 years, and if you can't provide that proof, then you're going bye-bye. So it's possible that somebody could have physically have been here for 10 years, but let's say they didn't establish some of these things. Let's say they're, just living out of somebody's garage, didn't want to, participate in the society, then yes, you could have been here for 10 years and still get removed. And then people would cry that, that oh, hey, they've been here for 10 years. But if you don't have the documentation that proves it, then
that's my question. Why is the burden of proof on that? Because it's almost basically saying they're guilty of not being here for 2 years unless they can prove that they have been here for 2 years. So, why is the legal system shifted? Shouldn't the burden of proof be on the government to prove that they have been here less than 2 years?
Hang on. The burden of proof is different depending on what jurisdiction and what type of law you're talking about. The burden of proof is not set in stone.
If I could add to that.
But I agree with you, Uncle Steve. The thing is, when it comes to the burden of proof, you gotta prove it beyond a shadow of a doubt.
That's only in criminal cases. In a civil case,
well,
let me finish.
You think illegal aliens are civil?
Please. I've given you 2 warnings. Let me thank you. The burden of proof in a criminal case is beyond a reasonable doubt, which a lot of people consider over 95%. The burden of proof in a civil case is a preponderance of the evidence, which is more than 50%. And then, depending on what jurisdiction you're in and what type of case it is, the burden of proof may or may not shift or be different.
So do you think illegal aliens? Do you think illegal aliens are, Uncle Steve, seriously, do you think that illegal aliens are civil or?
Seriously, I'm not an expert.
You won't answer the question.
Doc, the answer is I don't know.
You don't know if illegal aliens are civil or criminal?
Well, Doc, you tell me.
They're criminal.
Yeah, get the fuck out.
If it's a law being broken, it automatically makes it criminal.
actually it's both.
And there you go.
Wait, how is this a...
And by the way, I just want to say, by the way, I'm the one that moved Doc down because he said, get the fuck out. I just assumed he was talking about himself, so I helped.
Well, how is this civil?
Everybody mute up. Thank you very much. So I definitely want to go to AJ, who I like and respect, even though I don't always agree with them. Good morning, AJ. AJ?
I think some of the issues are being conflated here. So I think people are assuming that due process means you're entitled to a full hearing before you're removed from the country. If everyone just takes a second to look up due process principles, what it gets at is making sure that your government is following the rules and procedures and the law that you're entitled to under the letter of the law before they take action. That's to prevent arbitrary or discriminatory action from the state. It doesn't mean that due process is the same thing for everyone in every situation. So when you come into the country, even if you've been there for less than 2 years, due process principles apply based on the definition I just gave, but it doesn't mean you get to have a full hearing before you're removed. Why? Because in the United States there are certain exceptions like expedited removals where maybe you don't get a full hearing before you go, but that doesn't mean you've been deprived of due process.
And Steve, going back to what you were talking about with the preponderance of evidence
Yes.
when civil cases.
Yes.
In this case, I wouldn't say that, like, for example, the government, ICE agency, someone, the person says, I've been here for 3 years, let's say, and the government is arguing, no, you have to prove it to us. Like, it's not that they have any evidence to the contrary. So, like, they don't have a preponderance of evidence at that point in time. However, it does seem that, like, where does that come into play? That's the only question that I have before I have a.
Are you talking about an immigration hearing or a standard civil hearing?
Well, when it comes to this, like, in terms of determining who's
Immigration? When you say this, you mean immigration?
Yeah, the topic that we've been.
I have no fucking idea.
That's what I was trying to just weigh in really quick, Pat. So, hey, Pat, really, just briefly, you asked why do they have to prove it shouldn't be the government? If I could just get my 2 points on it, right? We have to prove that we're citizens. Whenever we fly on an airplane, we need a passport. If we get a license, we need to have a separate bill to say that we are who we are. So that's just the process. Everyone has to prove it. So in the context of what Mojo was describing with Paul, where you've been in the country for 2 years, they're just saying prove it because there's a legal pathway to citizenship for whoever it's working. Sometimes people are seeking asylum or leaving political oppression, right? So they're saying if you're here, you contribute to society, you have this, that, and the third, we'll at least give you a fair hearing. But before you get the hearing, show us what you got, and then you get to the hearing.
So like that.
The other point.
That's exactly what I was thinking. So, like, my logic is why do you need to have utility bills signed? Like a lot. So my question. Hold on. Let me land the plane real quick. Would a photo of them crossing the border, like with a New York Times, like a newspaper in hand, wouldn't that suffice? Wouldn't that be enough to prove it? If it would be documented if they were deported already and then came back. So like if the government doesn't have that, then they have no proof that that person hasn't stayed here for the last 2 years. Wouldn't that be enough to suffice as some level of evidence?
You know what? I hate when I go get my license with this real ID that they need me to bring a bank bill and I just can't use the electric bill, right? Where I'm semi-jokingly saying, whatever reason they have to verify it, I'm going to let the experts do that. I don't think they're going to take a New York Times picture of you crossing the border as anything. So let's just push that on the side out. We can look that up and figure out why you have to create whatever ID and what bills to prove stuff, right? Here's what I was going to add, if I could, because I'm not the expert either. But what I do know is that the immigration bill, which is the reason that we've always needed a comprehensive immigration bill, which is a kind of sort of reason why Donald Trump is doing what he's doing, is because we've never had enough resources. The immigration bill, the bipartisan one that was at the beginning of the year last year, it literally had 700 to 800 magistrate judges because these hearings for immigration are not the normal court process. It just reduces, like the gentleman said, the arbitrary, potentially discriminative nature of just a bunch of people deciding, yeah, you're good, yeah, you're not good. So if we get more magistrate judges and more places where these people can process, then Trump can get his numbers up. So that's why I was saying that we just need a comprehensive immigration bill, and we've always needed because we're teetering around it. And so a bunch of people in the clubhouse that don't know shit about the law, we're speculating on this shit, but they just need to.
I want to take a little
laws on.
So I want to do a little less speculating and get back to a question that came up in with Steve and with Pat in regards to whether it's civil or criminal. If you overstay a visa, that is a civil case, and the consequence can be removal, i.e., deportation. If you're first-time illegal entrant, that is considered a criminal offense. It's a misdemeanor with up to 6 months in jail. It could be the consequence, and getting deported. And if you re-enter after being deported, that's also a criminal offense, but that's a felony, and that can get you anywhere from 2 to 20 years in prison. And then employers can be caught in a civil matter if they employ illegals, and then immigration fraud is a criminal case also, where you could go to jail where you're presenting false documents. So those are the differences of how you would get caught up in civil and criminal cases.
Yeah, and I completely agree with everything Roger said. That's number one. Number two, what CO said about getting more magistrates, I completely agree with that. Hiring more magistrates, aka judges, to hear these issues would absolutely speed up the process. I think the only objection to doing that is cost and money. I haven't heard any other objection. And last but not least, this is why I say I don't know the exact procedure. I'm not familiar with the magistrate process. All courtrooms of all different jurisdictions have little nuanced rules. So when I say I don't know, it's really that I don't know. If I knew, I would say it, but I don't.
What's up, Rolo?
Good evening. What are we talking about?
Rolo, this is your wheelhouse. We're talking about U.S. immigration law, so we had to get an Aussie here to tap into expertise. So thank you for.
That is my specialty. I'm considered an expert on the subject, so please ask anything.
Not everybody speak at once.
Well, like listen, like like the Garcia kid that came back from, what was it, El Salvador. They said, oh yeah, he didn't get his due process for his criminal case, but he already had 2 deportation orders before he had that case, and they deported him. They're like, yeah, but he needs to come back for his due process. Are you trying to fuck up Article 3 of the Constitution, like the judicial system, by clogging it up with a bunch of this bullshit?
I think the issue is with him is he had like a stay order on his deportation that they violated.
Let me say hello to Nicole. Hey, Nicole, how you doing?
Hey, JB. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
You and these titles, child. What's going on?
I didn't put this title. Somebody changed it, but it's all good. So what do you think? Is are Trump and ICE going too far?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Damn, she said all gas, no break.
Amen, sister.
Do you think they could be doing more?
They could, but people keep trying to stand in President Trump's way. And I feel that if you come here, it used to be a privilege to be here. It used to be a process you had to go through, and people were glad to be here, and they appreciated their citizenship. Now they feel entitled. It's not valued. They feel that everybody else is obligated to give them something. They feel like the American people owe them. It's a totally different energy right now. And personally, I don't want people in this country that are burning the flag. I want people in this country that don't want to be here. You don't want to be here, go. Because quite frankly, you're living off my tax dollars. So however that sounds, is how I feel.
Why do you think America started Liberia?
what did you say? I'm sorry.
No, but at the end of the Civil War, they started a country called Liberia in West Africa. And that's where we sent everybody that wanted to go back to Africa in Liberia. How's Liberia doing today?
Well, I don't get all into who should be deported. I'm saying if you come here illegally and you refuse to go through the process, or you just not, like people have been here 10, 15, 20 years and haven't gone through the process. My best friend married a man from Netherlands, and she paid a whole lot of money to go through the process to get him naturalized. And so I think he's a dual citizen because he refused to let go of the Netherlands. I don't blame him, but so she's kind of upset. Like, I had to go through this process of making sure my husband can stay legally so he can get a job and that sort of thing. And now all these other people are here kind of like screaming in your face like I deserve to be here. And, yeah, it's a different
They blew a bunch of it on,
and that's the way I feel.
Hey, I came late to the party I just got here. Did you guys hear the breaking news? Has that been discussed? The Supreme Court ruling?
You mean the one that's on the Jumbotron?
Oh, my bad.
No, but I don't know. I wasn't here the whole time. I don't know if we unpacked it.
And now for breaking news with Anthony.
Nah, it's just it's so crazy because he limited the ability of federal judges to the Supreme Court limited the ability of federal judges to temporarily pause President Trump's executive orders. It's about time. Thank you, sir. Yeah, it's about time, man. Like, I know there are other rooms on Clubhouse that, people are going to have their panties in a bunch, but, like, the dude's been winning a lot lately in the court system, but you'll never hear that, from certain people on Clubhouse.
Dude, that is not a real thing. It did not just happen. For real?
Hey, hold on. Sometimes the chat gives us some good info here. So Soren, who now goes by the name Alex, he says ICE needs to remove all Zionists out of the U.S. and dump them all to Israel. Don't threaten me with the time.
Dude, please. If you want my guns, I'll give you the bullets first.
Roger, there's also a comment in the group chat that says anyone who uses French dressing should be deported. It would really clean things up. So, sorry, I meant Mojo. Well,
Mojo, do you use French dressing?
No, we were just chatting about this. I prefer Russian dressing or blue cheese dressing. And in general, I think French food is good. I even took a cooking class a few years ago, but that was to meet women. I think Italian food in general is better than French food, and I'm willing to fight about that.
Roger, sorry about that. Mo,
Dude, French cuisine sucks.
I do not eat blue food. Nobody should eat blue food. Period. End of story.
Let me ask this.
Blue means
Doc. How about this?
Yeah.
Why don't we just ask Paige a question, because she's the French expert here.
There you go.
So, would you agree with this statement, Paige, that French food is beautifully plated, perhaps more plated beautifully than any other cuisine, but it's overrated when it comes to flip?
I think that's fair. It's all about the technique, right? And they have a cuisine that kind of separates themselves because it's highly, highly technical, and then, good products, and there's a simplicity to it, so you're not going to get a lot of flavor a lot of times, but I think, I think that's fair. I don't think it's overrated. I think it just depends what you're looking for.
Not looking for snails.
I love how we can weave in and out of these conversations. This is amazing. I'm gonna go on mute for a while, but this has been a lovely conversation. JB, great room.
JB, did you hear about the chicken factory out there in Nebraska?
Chicken factory.
And the argument was, well, these Americans, they're working these jobs that the Americans wouldn't want. So when ICE raided it, the next day, all of the city citizens, A lot of the city citizens went and put in applications for those jobs. Those jobs were filled within 24 hours. What do you think about that?
What city? Please, what city was that?
That was Omaha, Nebraska.
The same thing happened in Mississippi under Trump's first term. One of those cities south of Jackson had a chicken plant raided by ICE. Like I think they got like 300 or so people and deported them. And right after, all the people at QU was like, "Thank you. We've been trying to get a job here for forever."
I almost feel like it's a loony liberal talking point that Americans don't want these jobs that typically go to illegals. Because as we've just heard, Nicole, I think that was Nicole and the gentleman who spoke after her state, these jobs are being filled up. I've been seeing videos on TikTok of American construction workers praising Donald Trump for job openings on construction sites. And a lot of these workers are saying they couldn't even get the jobs before the massive rollout of deportations because apparently there was no room for them. No one would hire the American workers. And now that a lot of these construction sites don't have their so-called illegal workers, imagine that. The positions are being filled by hardworking American construction workers and builders.
Yeah, like
But the one thing that anyone in real estate or construction would also say to you is that, like, yes, they may very well be hardworking American construction workers, but like the definition of like it's comparative compared to other American construction workers. Yeah, 110%. But compared, like anyone who's been on a job site knows. Because that's also a loony concern. Like, yes, I agree with you. That's a loony liberal talking point that they're taking jobs that Americans don't want or anything like that. There's so many people who are looking for jobs, so I'll be happy with it.
When you say, hold on, Pat.
Is that like?
Oh, Pat, hold on. Question for you. When you say liberal talking point, what do you mean by liberal?
I was quoting what she said. She said it's a loony liberal talking point.
But what is a liberal talking point? Because I think
ask her.
Well, I'm just confused by liberal. I say liberal talking point because it's generally, from my perspective, I'm not saying it's exclusive to liberals, but a lot of liberals are always, specifically politicians. Jasmine Crockett, for example, going on and on and on about we can't deport the illegals, we can't, enforce ICE and shipping them back to their countries because they do the jobs that Americans don't want to do. Now, I'm not saying this is exclusive to liberals, but anytime I hear that point, they do the jobs Americans don't want to do, it's generally coming from the loony fringe left.
Well, but again, loony fringe left and liberals is a conflation that I don't think we should make. I think one of the biggest mistakes that Republicans or conservatives have made over the last 30 years is the vilification of liberals. What you've done by doing this is you've lumped in the far left, you've lumped in progressives, and you've allowed them to be called liberals. We should welcome liberalism into this country. In fact, the founders of this country were radical liberals, and I think that we should allow for that space, and we should call out what we should be calling out, which is the lunatic progressives. And so those are, and by the way, when somebody says they're a liberal and a progressive, they don't know what either of those terms mean.
Well, to that point, I agree, but you probably have noticed, and I wonder what your take is, for the past, year, we've seen a handful of longtime Democratic or liberal-leaning politicians, for example, who've abandoned the Democratic Party. And their stance is because the modern Democratic Party has gone too far left with some of their ideology, some of their policies. I've heard the statement, the Democratic Party, I didn't abandon the Democratic Party abandoned me. So I do feel, in my perspective, there is a difference between liberalism, as we've long understood what liberalism to be, the progressives, and then just like we have the far right with their seemingly fringe viewpoints, I think a lot of people have decided or concluded that there is a fringe sect within liberalism that they're either called far left or the loony left. And some of the ideas that they support are not ideas that are upheld by, for lack of a better terms, your typical typical liberal. So when I call them loony liberals, you know, I'm not lumping the progressives and the, you know, the old school liberals under that umbrella. But I get your point.
Yeah, and again, I think these terms are important, and you know, I think a lot of people just think that you know that they're all synonymous, and you know, leftists, right? For what it's worth, like where does left and right even come from? And I would welcome the French people in the room to speak on this, but Americans are probably a little too slow to know this, but it really comes to, if you sat on the right, you were in support of the crown, and if you sat on the left, you were opposing the crown. And so you can then take that to mean shorthand that you're against tradition if you're on the left, and you could uphold tradition, and which is where we get conflations about conservatism and liberalism being left-right terms. But ultimately, what it comes down to is the important distinctions is, what do you value when it comes to liberty, when it comes to justice, when it comes to equality? And what we find is that the progressives are the ones that want to weaponize government to force equality. And really, what would save us all is if we would go back and listen to the classical liberals, which came up with these great ideas, which many conservatives, not the ones today that are running around calling themselves conservatives that want to weaponize government as well, but the ones that said, hey, look, those are some pretty bitchin' ideas that those radical liberals came up with. We should conserve those ideas, right? So that you can have conservatives that are protecting classical liberal ideas. There's a lot of synergy between these two groups. But ultimately, what we need to embrace is the idea that we should prioritize liberty over you should prioritize liberty and justice, and you should forget about this idea of equality, because we're not equal. Everybody is very different in their skills, their knowledge, their ability. And I think the sooner people realize that equality is a myth, and trying to force it through government, mandate is where we get our problem.
Well, before anybody goes, hold on 1 second. I'm out of here, guys. Have a great day. I know Nai's gonna be a great top left. Thank you. Nai's gonna be a great top left. I know she's comfortable there. See you guys.
Hey Roger, just real quick, man. I agree with everything you said. I'm just curious as to your stance on, do you think the meanings, the definitions of words evolve over time?
I think people hijack words, of course. I mean, let's once upon a time, the word gay meant happy. So yes, you could definitely hijack a fucking word.
Got it. So
can I go real quick? Can I go, when we were talking about
Wait, hold on.
Job site.
Wait, stop speaking. This is now. I just want to say something to my fellow mods. I'm gonna be silent in the background. I have 2 back-to-back interviews to conduct. So, Mojo, Steve, Sig, just so y'all know, I won't be able to adequately moderate the space for a hot minute because I'm about to jump on.
You got it, and I have good interview.
All right.
So, thank you. So when we're talking about these people coming in and raiding job sites like home builders and all this, you got construction workers who are truck drivers who go in there and move those backhoes and all that. As of June 25th, they can no longer use a translator to read or write or speak English in truck driving, supposedly. So they're being tested on the road. I think this is good because that means more Americans are going to be able to get these jobs in truck driving. Yes, they say we have a shortage, but we've also, during this shortage, taken on a lot of people that are foreigners who come here supposedly with a visa for truck driving who don't even know. And Florida has proven that they have given, through their DMV, a lot of people licenses that shouldn't have been through the DMV.
And to what you just said, cool. About like the being able to be not using translators, and it's not just for like Hispanics, because like with my job, because with my job I deal with a lot of Eastern European truck drivers, and they're a pain in the ass. You can't understand the shit that they're saying.
They're included in this. And that's why I'm saying this is going back. It's going to hit deep, and this means these be able to continue with their license, or who have gone through Washington, I think state where they had an issue. I might be wrong on the state, but there was another state that had issues where they were handing out licenses to drivers. But this is important because we operate construction equipment. We operate But yeah, I mean, it's a good thing that he's doing what he's supposed to do for what we asked.
Can you remove Cody?
But yeah, I mean, that's important to me because that means maybe more of our fellow Americans will actually get jobs, and these truck drivers won't be coming over getting their whatever temporary license.
That was fucking just. What the fuck?
For the record, there's no law that requires truck drivers to speak and write English. There are laws in Florida and probably other states that require